opportunities here that actually taken can actually outperform your competitors in Winston-Salem. Okay, so that's the second one. The third one is the one I just mentioned up here, you know, the conventional Main Street. So between this and this and this, you begin to have a box. You see this box? This box here is a mile. This is a mile. Now, when I came here for that week of the Furniture Mart, it was completely incoherent. I didn't know where to go. What's happening here? Am I in Siberia? You know, what's going on? This is a very, very, I would say, conservative plan that gives you a mile's worth of activity. And if you orchestrate it together, remember that school of fish that Kennedy showed? All those fish? Okay, yeah, you know, they're all operating independently, but they're in the same piece of ocean. What we're actually saying is in this piece of ocean, we should have 4 fish, you know, actually working in a cohort towards one thing. If you get this going, you're easily allocating enough to do for a whole afternoon and evening of a Saturday. And at that point, you're going to get you're going to get a 2-hour market that is going to be willing to come. And that's how we grow it. Now, from the fame of this place, not because it's a furniture center, which is where your good name comes from, but from being a really fun place on a Saturday, you begin growing. And it begins, you know, and the kids begin noticing, and when the kids notice, the developers notice, and then the developers begin saying, you know, there is an upside to developing here. And then what we do is once it becomes profitable because it's cool, the developers begin completing the frontages of the blocks, the fronts. They begin healing the blocks with what are called liner buildings, thin buildings that give fronts to the street. They're 1 and 2 stories only. The parking remains in the back, and you basically fill your downtown. Now, this is going to require something that I'm going to ask you to do. You have to downzone the city to 2 stories. I don't know what the zoning is, but it's too much. If it's 5 stories, nothing will happen because you don't have the value for a 5-story building. You need to downzone it to 2 stories so that it fills out. And that's one of the things that actually we're going to recommend very, very closely. Now, remember, if you leave it the old higher story, first of all, the investment required is so much greater that you basically eliminate most developers. All the developers that have $2 million, they can't work. You need developers with $15 million. There are fewer of those, and there are other places that it's easier to do it. So if you downzone it, many smaller developers can work. Also, you can begin healing the enormous amount of 2nd and 3rd and 4th rate frontage that you have without losing the parking in the back. Where has this been done before? West Palm Beach. West Palm Beach had infinite zoning. We lowered it. It filled out, became a wonderful place. Then we were able to raise it again. Because then you could build a high-rise because it was actually worth something. Okay, so this has been done before. It takes a certain amount of political will and developers to understand that development isn't winning the lottery. You know, getting the one high-rise built and everybody else, the rest of the parking lots lie fallow for decades. So this is the little green piece, the green street, the light imprint. This is the little connector, which is going to be unbelievably cool, and I'll document later. This is the really hip place. Of course, you've seen this before. The main street, and then this is the box that's a mile long. Okay? There is a potential next step of creating these parking lots of yours. Okay, these terrible parking lots of yours are actually a secret second high point downtown. A secret second high point. Your streets are your streets. They've got those in Winston-Salem. You know, they've got those in other places. Everybody's seen an American Main Street before. Yours are about medium charm, medium to low. Okay, this isn't a charming little town, let's face it, okay, on your streets. But that concatenation of parking lots in the back, you know, by good designers working independently, these famous artists, these famous craftsmen, you know, building buildings with containers, you know, building temporary structures with those crates, those pallets that you have standing over there. All these furniture makers that are sitting essentially unemployed, you know, back in their houses, coming in, working with the kids. All you have to do is suspend the people who say no. Just stop them from saying no. Okay? These are not high-rises. They don't need sprinklers. We don't need inspectors. We don't need drawings. Just please let it happen. That's how America was built. Okay? It was built by people doing it that way. Now, later on, when this is a cool place, and you actually have a real estate market, right, and you're going to build it right, well, by all means, let's have the inspectors back. But right now, nothing conventional can be done without subsidy. Okay, why is everybody talking about public-private partnerships? Were there public-private partnerships in 1980? Did they exist in 1970? Did they exist in 1870? No. Do you know why? Because you didn't need them. The public-private partnership is the government subsidizing developers for a problem that they themselves caused by making construction too expensive. Okay, that's why it's emerged. You're mitigating a problem by throwing money at it that you actually don't have anymore. But the thing to do is to get to the core problem and actually stop preventing people from doing what they've always done. Okay, and I'm talking about radical stuff here. You know that high-rise, that beautiful white high-rise, which is the grid that you come downtown? That building could be one of the coolest buildings you've ever seen. It's essentially a wonderful loft building. No one wants to touch it because it has to be sprinklered, it has to be brought up to code, it has the da-da-da-da, all this stuff. Okay, how many people in its 40-year life have actually been injured or died? Okay, let's just do statistics. Let's be realistic. Okay, let's be people of reality, not people of the book. Now, the book says you have to sprinkle it or you're going to die. Well, how many people have actually died? How many people have been injured? Zero. Zero in 40 years. So why are we torturing this building to the point that we've been told to demolish it? Why have we tortured this building to the point that people will give it away? Because some book says it has to be sprinklered? And by the way, that's only a metaphor. The sprinkler is the least of it. You know, that's actually not that terribly expensive. It's everything else that goes to it. Can't you bring it up to code? Why? Did it hurt anybody when it wasn't up to code? You see, this is the kind of thinking that I'm going to talk, and I cannot stop talking about it because you're not ready actually to play in the big leagues. Okay, this international building code that has recently been downloaded here, you know, that works in Geneva. That works in New York. That works in San Francisco. It doesn't work here. You have to go back to a condition, to a situation which is actually coincides with your economic level, which is relatively low. And then your downtown will take off. You know, if you do that, and by the way, we have a little nickname for it. It's called the pink zone. It's a zoning category called pink. And it's a reference to light red tape. You lighten the red tape. Now, this is not a free-for-all. Okay, there are rules. There are certain things you can and cannot do. There's responsibilities you can and cannot do. Those in government who give approvals need to be protected from liability. But you're not forcing people. Basically, you're allowing the individuals themselves, who in the end are completely liable. You know, when I sign for an architectural drawing, you know, I don't care how many inspectors in the city approved it. When the building's in trouble, it's 100% my liability. I don't even think of calling the inspector or the inspectors who looked at it for, 2 months to approve it. They have no liability. Why should they even have? Why shouldn't I sign a contract that says I'm entirely responsible for this when I am entirely responsible for it anyway? You see what I'm saying? The developers are entirely responsible. Everybody who does their building is entirely responsible. Where does the city get in to say we get to check everything? Well, if they do that, I will do that under the condition that they take a responsibility. When somebody trips and dies, sorry, fire marshal, your insurance policy, not mine. Do you see what I'm saying? Let's just be rational about this and do it. That is going to take a combination of my hammering on it, you're not forgetting what the problem is, the city council telling the manager telling the fire marshal, and the city attorney resolving it. And actually coming up with legal protocols that protects what is protectable, but allows individuals to take responsibilities. There's a chain. Now, one of the more exciting things is to see whether we can actually, in the midst of this charrette, develop that chain that allows this place to move forward. If it does, totally groundbreaking. I actually think that that this kind of thing would have immediate repercussion and would be supported at the state level. Because a state like this one is just waiting for this to happen. In fact, I think the nation is waiting. By the way, the Chinese are not waiting. Okay? They're not waiting. For Miami, Panama is not waiting. Cuba is not waiting. Nobody's waiting. Only the Americans are stuck in their own bureaucracy. And we cannot compete worldwide when you can't get anything done efficiently. And I could tell you anecdote after anecdote in which entire fields of solar devices are finished in China with their power lines before the first level of American environmental permitting takes place. Finished, first step filed, same amount of time. We cannot compete in this world. We cannot, and I would love it if this became, for us and for you, the first step in that direction. The university has terrific buildings. It has terrific energy. It's a place of management genius, frankly. I would like to think that the ideas that we have for the mall, which is owned by the university, might be able to be managed by the university. I don't know whether they're in the business of incubating, of doing a business accelerator, but I would like to propose that that mall, which is cheap space, become the world's largest business incubator, and that it not only perform for the 5,000 students of High Point University, but that they become the natural stopping place of the other 335,000 students that are being incubated and decanted everywhere. And we are going to have some drawings of that mall that are just so cool that you can't wait. This is part of Main Street, and I want to point out that you're about to spend a fortune burying wires that we won't, the beauty, the new enhanced beauty won't even be noticed. Okay? So we're running a triage, and we're lowering the number of miles that are actually have the wire buried. By the way, this is a really nice place. The Blue Zucchini couldn't be better. They're not interested in, they don't care about their wires. It's automobile-oriented strip, and that's what it does best. And, even in Kennedy's, there is room for this. This is very entrepreneurial. Certain businesses need to be here. Okay. So this is a plan that the one we originally received that goes from the library all the way down to a building up here, which is the mill. And these are the interventions we had. And this is a very long place. We are suggesting this kind of thing. By the way, I didn't want to sort of horrify you by going from ugly to beautiful. This is the most beautiful single place on the entire street. Okay, and there's two things that are beautiful. First of all, there's actually a tree. And a tree that overlaps the street. Second of all, there's some very dignified buildings forming urban space. You recognize these apartment buildings. They're not expensive, but they give you a feeling of urbanity. And third of all, for some miracle, the wires are exceedingly neat. Okay, so I'm being very fair. What happens if you remove them? Great first step. But you know what? Not that big a change considering the millions of dollars. What you need is to actually take advantage of removing the wires by planting trees. Because that's why the problem with the wires is not the wires per se, it's the inability to plant street trees. So you need to go to the second step. And so the next thing we do is we narrow the street, we widen the sidewalk and the planting bed. We put a rumble strip in the middle. Okay, so it's 5 lanes at different times of day. It can be parking lanes, moving lanes, and then turning lanes. And then we put the parking and then the trees. Okay, now, if you achieve this, okay, you're clapping at something that's completely normal. Do you understand what I'm saying? You're starting from a very low point here. That's a minimum quality American Main Street, of which there are 100,000. Okay, if you do not do this, it doesn't matter how much you incubate, how much you do, how much you subsidize, all this stuff, it just doesn't work. Okay? And we're not planning to do this any length. We just want about a half mile. Is that too much to ask? Just a half mile of properly done. By the way, none of these alley widths, see, I'm afraid that the Public Works or the Traffic Engineering Department is going to say injury and death. You can't possibly. How can you do that? How can you do that? It happens all over the place. I mean, absolutely. The problem is that they're looking at this as a highway. Okay, this is considered a highway. Now, as a highway calculated at 35 miles an hour, which is really 45 or 55, yeah, but you know what happens? This is self-healing. When you have this, you can't go 55 miles an hour. Do you see? It's a chicken-egg thing. Sure, right now it's 55. And the drunk at midnight is going to go 55. But that's because they can go 55, and you shouldn't support 55. What you do is you change the circumstances, and it gets to be 30, and then you have pedestrians. And by the way, at rush hour, yes, you take these out. You know, yes, and you get your 5 lanes back or your 4 lanes back. But all the lanes are narrower. Because what is happening right now is that your traffic department, your public works, is using a suburban manual in an urban condition. And because you haven't downloaded the latest manuals, there's now something called context-based design for thoroughfares, and that needs to be downloaded. Official manual from the ITE. Now, let's look at this. Instead of the very, very long, almost endless burial thing, we'd like to pick this intersection right here, which is by far the best. And that intersection is, don't tell me, is the, that's not Lexington. We used to center it on Lexington. Okay? Okay, this is called, yes, Paris. Okay, Ferris. This is Ferris. Okay, when we came here, we were all focused on Lexington, because Lexington has much more traffic. But Lexington can never become first rate. It has too much traffic. So what we need to do is to make it beautiful, because it's a gateway. That doesn't mean it's pedestrian, but we can coordinate, particularly because this block is under single ownership. This building is already decent. This one is actually available. We can make a place that everybody will notice and say, aha, so this is where I turn to go downtown. It's called the gateway. This is the one that has the most potential. This is where the inn is. This is where the beautiful church is. And from here to here, you have all your best houses, finally ending in the Presbyterian church and the library. This intersection here, which I would like to call the 100% corner for north downtown, is not for the kids. It's for the people who live here. You see that circle? That's a quarter-mile walk. That's a 5-minute walk. All the people in here, and it's a very large number of houses, won't get in a car to go there. They can walk. They can walk to the bar. They can walk to all sorts of things. And by the way, this is 5 minutes. A little further is only 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes. A 10-minute walk is nothing. I just want to be very conservative. And so this is the new center. Now, this takes you beautifully from the intersection to the library. Let's talk about this library. The library, which is a huge investment, is pretty miserable looking in its parking lot. And it also has this weird orientation. Why is it facing that way? What's going on? It's facing that way because the architect wanted it to be seen as you enter. Okay, you see this? The problem is that in front of it, first of all, the show is being stolen by Krispy Kreme. And apparently, I've been told around here there is no competition, especially when the red light goes on. So perhaps the library can have its own red light, like the bestsellers have arrived, you know. But basically what happens is that the library is facing absolutely correctly the right way, because this is where the action is. The architect got it right. But the setting, what's called the entourage, that which surrounds it, is a parking lot. And it's a really random parking lot, too. It's continually, sort of preventing you from reading it as a civic building. So if we take it and actually plant it properly, and I hope there's a detail, this can be a wonderful pendant termination for your half mile of really excellent Main Street. Now, what would that be like? Do you realize that from Lexington to the library here is 0.86 miles? The famous, and oh, I'm sorry, this is actually backwards, right? Isn't that Greensboro and this Winston-Salem? I believe it is. It's right. Okay. Greensboro has a Main Street which is actually slightly shorter, and Winston-Salem is only 0.36 miles. Okay, you have too much. This idea you have that you have to go and actually take it all the way to Kingdom Come and waste money everywhere is much too long. You just want half a mile of excellence and not 2 miles of mediocrity. Okay, so that's what we're going to propose. So take the money there and actually refund just this section. By the way, south of here, if you keep going, then that is actually until for about another half mile, it's second rate, and then you enter the first rate again, which is the downtown. Okay, and that's how the world works. It's not a continuous paradise. There are better and worse places. And the traffic engineering cannot have a single section, whether it's good or bad. It has to be, we know this is strip, and it has this section, and then we know this is walkable, and it has this street section, and then we know this is strip, and it has that section, and then we know it's walkable. And that's called context-based design, and it's not even radical. There are books out of Washington that tell you to do this. It's just that it needs to be downloaded locally. And that's going to require the city council to tell the manager and the manager to tell Public Works to please get with it and actually use the latest manual and not some place that when you were in Georgia Tech they taught you. I'm not making this up. Now, the last generation of traffic engineers, this is just where the library is. Okay, so we were just getting excited. Remember, I was getting really excited about the library being the termination, because I'm looking for a termination. Lexington and the Gateway is obviously a termination. Where do I end over here? And then we find, like gold, that the library is facing the right place. And later on, with a better projector, I'm going to show you what a cool design that is. That's a really cool design. And then I am told, just when I'm getting excited, that this is about to be redesigned, this intersection here, which is it Parkland? Wait, I have it here. Yes, you know what it is, but it is actually, isn't that Parkway on Montlieu? Okay. Okay, so this intersection, now look at this. This intersection here is going to be improved with 6 lanes. 6 lanes. I want to take a picture of what 6 lanes is. 6 lanes is what's in front of the mall out there. You know what that feels like? So for some weird reason, this is going to be 6-laned. And when I heard that, I said, I gave up on the library. You know, why even connect the library when no one's going to cross 6 lanes? Because no one does. Then we began to analyze it, and we began to see that what was happening is that a mess had been caused here by a prior generation of traffic engineers, and they were going to clean it up, but in cleaning it up, they decided to improve the world for some future of many cars. And actually, the world is going the other way. The other thing is they're spending a large amount of money here on a street that goes absolutely nowhere, and goes absolutely nowhere. It's actually quite remarkable. This street goes nowhere. So we said, but then there's this street down here. What if you took this money, just cleaned it up simply instead of in a complex way, put it down here? This street actually goes on and on and on and on, all the way to the end of the world, and this one goes to the end of the world. It actually literally goes to San Francisco and New York. It doesn't stop. This is where the improvements should be on the other side of the library, to the south, which is where again, we're in auto-dominated, it's no longer pedestrian. So we want to move it down, and we did a little drawing that looks like this. Okay, so this is the little mess. This is where the library is. This is the little mess that's driving everybody crazy, right? So what did they do? They made a mess that's even messier. It's absolutely extraordinary. Okay, the world has never seen this before. Look at that intersection. Now, if you build this, I will never, by the way, I'm being modest, but sometimes I'm called back and they say, Andres, you were right. I'm sorry we didn't listen. If you build this, I'm going to have to come here for a festival of people telling me that I was right. Because this is a palpable mess. Okay, no human can actually do this. It's expensive and it's ugly. By the way, they've already started construction. Okay, this is the solution. Okay, the solution is a very simple, you leave this alone, you make this very simple and beautiful circle that actually lines up perfectly with a beautiful classical lawyer's office that's here. Any human can handle this. This takes less money next time. Move down here where you actually have roads that go everywhere and want to be wider, and spend the high traffic money down here. And by the way, you could even pick up the circle of the library, and everything just works perfectly. Okay, this is very simple. And people say this is impossible. It's not impossible. All you have to do is say stop, start building on the other end, and let's get this right. Because it's either you stop it now or you dig it up 5 years from now. That's really the simple part. This is a little diagram that shows how the existing road, the existing highway, the 6-laner improves nothing because it only goes from here to here, while this one is the one that's required to have the very long run. Okay, so that's a very simple diagram. And there's a whole series. Tomorrow morning, if you're interested, Rick Hall, one of our 2 engineers, and actually Paul Crabtree will be discussing the reasons and how to go back. What does it take to go back from your one-way pairs? By the way, every neighborhood that has a one-way street has speedier cars. It's the 2 ways that actually, if you're in a residential area, you want 2 ways because that's what slows the cars up. And you have, all this has to be cleaned up, and this has to be cleaned up, etc. And you know what? If you don't do, this is a courtesy. You know, cleaning up your mess outside of our area, that's just because I have traffic engineers here who feel sorry for you. Okay, but that's not outside the area. This is neither here nor there. But it would be nice if you actually cleaned up this 1950s theory of one-way streets everywhere, which all they do is add speed, not capacity, and they confuse people. Now, let's talk about the mall. The mall is dead. Nothing unusual about that. They're all dying. And Kennedy spoke about that. This one is only 2/3 dead. And you can see the area that is actually now in play and the couple of stores that are there. And we had a discussion this morning about shouldn't we spend all of our energy downtown? If you're an environmentalist, shouldn't you be downtown? We can't throw away suburbia. You know, the investment of the last 50 years needs to be retrofitted. We can't throw it away. We need to repurpose it. The great thing about these malls, there are many good things about them. They're long-span structures. They already meet fire code. They have plenty of first-rate pavement, which is an excellent foundation for light buildings, you know, like camps and temporary structures, an excellent foundation. And they're always located where there's high traffic, so the buses love stopping there. And by the way, the neighbors are so much happier to have something lively than a dead mall that there isn't even opposition. Malls are the future of suburbia. All these malls are the future town centers. Now, you definitely don't need a town center here. This is where we're proposing the great business accelerator, where the 355,000 students stop on the way to becoming millionaires by 30, which, of course, is what they're all dreaming about. And some of them will do it if they're given a chance. I would like to see a whole bunch of kids not have to work for other people. You know, the ones that have the energy. I'd like to see a whole bunch of them. And certainly there shouldn't be a single kid that can't get a job, that can't make a job. Okay? And there's another thing I want to add. Why are all the kids artists now? And filmmakers? You know why? It's the only thing you can do without a permit. You can't make a cookie and sell it. You can't make a pickle and sell it unless you have a certified kitchen. You know, and at least at this moment, we have a lot of freedom of expression, and you can make any painting you want and sell it. But I think it's kind of pathetic, the number of kids that are artists, frankly, and I think they're backed into it because it's the only thing they can imagine that they can actually do by themselves. We need to give those kids the breaks that we had when we started our businesses. You know, I'm of an age that it was really easy to start a business. So let's do that. I do hope that I'm pitching this hard. I do hope that it's High Point University that picks up on it. I don't know whether the skill set is in High Point to do this kind of thing, but the departments are here. The design department, the interior design department, the business schools, you know, the faculty is here, but it's not going to happen. The kind of thing we're talking about is not going to happen in this wonderful, highly curated campus. We're talking about rougher stuff. It's basically a different kind of High Point. And it's a High Point as a courtesy to all the other colleges, because they happen to be the only college that ended up with an empty mall. And I think they do have the spirit to do it. So what's it like, this mall? Standard issue small. Two things happen, and I'm going to do this later. But inside, it's a two-story mall. What you can do in the first floor is continue. By the way, malls are wonderful. They're all big span spaces, large span spaces. You can actually do big things there. You can have your shops. You can have your great whatever. I mean, it's up to you. And by the way, they're all fire rated. And then on top, you can live on the second floor. You can punch through the ceiling, make courtyards, and make studios on top, high ceiling studios. And then in this incredible parking lot, overstructured parking lot, you can allow people to build their own houses, to build their own dwellings. Do you know how many years we built our own dwellings in America? The first 350 years. And then it occurred to somebody in the last 20 to prevent it. Okay, it's profoundly unfair. One of the great pleasures that humans have, and you know people who have built their own houses, is the incredible pride that they have to have built their own dwelling. It's one of the great pleasures of the world. It's almost like having a child. Actually, it's more dependable in terms of pleasure. It's possibly a better investment even. Okay. But to actually take that away from people because the kids can't build their own houses. What about all the architecture schools in North Carolina? What would happen if those architects there, you know, instead of working for somebody else for 15 years, came here and they knew they could get clients their own age and they could come here and do things the way it used to be possible. Because now it's impossible. The kids cannot design and permit their own buildings. And you can know how cool this parking lot would be. Full of streets and full of squares attached to the mall, you know, little dwellings. And by the way, there's a category in the South called the camp, right? You know, the hunting camp and so forth. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. But this is going to be what, you know, at least the dream that I have is making this the first pink zone in America. The first zone that you can actually act on your own responsibility, build your place, start your business. Now, if you're successful, you have to decant and be a grown-up and get a proper permit elsewhere. So this is the prospect that we have for the mall. And it's very easy to design. We have great sections. You know, you can see the street, the punch through. You can see the studios. Okay, this is one of the most exciting things that we're talking about. And then I think the Strip Shopping Center, this shopping center, which is slightly moribund, called the University Plaza, I think we have a way to make it work like a Main Street again. And this is where this is actually the little bit of college town that High Point University doesn't have. Now, may I talk about how normal it is for a college to build this college town? Princeton, in 1920, was like High Point University. It was in the middle of a beautiful field, and the students said, well, what now? What do I do now? And one of the alumni, called Potter Palmer, built Princeton. He actually built the town center, nicely detailed, as if Washington had slept there, all colonial buildings. The place worked as a perfect town center for 77 years, never stopped making money for the university. And about 15 years ago, they sold it to a developer to actually upgrade it. It was a total success. When you go to the beautiful, beautiful historic town of Princeton, it was actually under single ownership, and it was designed in 1927, and no one knows that. Okay? Stanford University, which is a relatively recent university, actually maybe even younger than this one, it's 1890s or 1880s. Stanford, Leland Stanford, what he did is he got a design from H.H. Richardson's firm to lay out both the university campus and Palo Alto. Palo Alto was built at the same time as Stanford. It was the college town. And actually, Palo Alto paid for Stanford. That was actually the endowment of Leland Stanford. So Leland Stanford bought the land, paid for the architects, and said, this town, as a real estate venture, is your endowment, and you can know where Stanford stands now. And it's only 120 to 130 years old, at the most, from nothing. And Palo Alto is a wonderful place. We have several times now in our career designed college towns for colleges that didn't have a town. I think that this little shopping center here has the potential very quickly to become the beginning, the seed of a college town. And in the manner of everything that happens at High Point, of course it'll grow. And so what we'll have is a kind of village, a kind of college town. Because remember, we cannot offer the kids in the downtown what they really need. Because the downtown is either for grown-ups, as I've shown you, or for kids partying, you know, for cool things, for farms. But these kids need a downtown, as every college does, and this could be its college town. So that's the one agenda. This is relatively easy to do. This is actually quite an easy one. So anyway, these are the ideas so far. This is not, by the way, this evening is not one for feedback. You know, as I said, this was my turn to talk long. In the other meetings, let this seep in, attend the other meetings, choose the ones you want, and then we'll get your feedback. And gradually you will see these ideas develop further and further into renderings. Some of them will even have costs associated. But they'll become real. In 10 days, they'll be real. And then you have to do what it takes to pick up the ball. And mostly, actually, the way I'm conceiving it is just getting out of the way. Just get out of the way, and this will happen because all these ideas make sense. Now, if you're going to go and actually act the way you've been acting with your initiatives and your developers, and I'm talking about the city administration at this moment, this isn't going to happen. So that's the challenge. Thank you very much.
Everyone's well.